Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. Conor Benn outclasses and outpoints and twice floors CHRIS EUBANK Jr. What would you have got? What odds would you have got for that? The two knockdowns came right in the final round. Big overhand rights. One of them clipped Eubank on the sort of behind the ear, sent him spinning. He got up, his legs were all over the place. He got up. Benn tore after him, launching all sorts of salvos, but did it in quite an aggressive but controlled manner, which kind of, I think, is the tale of the whole fight, really. Got Eubank on the floor again, faced first down. Eubank got up and managed to last the last few seconds, and it really was only a few seconds. But this was a titanic win for Benn, who... Well, what do you say? I mean, where do we begin with this one? Eubank, overall, the fight looked to me like a contest between a very young, fit and healthy, but smaller man and a bigger, but much older and drained man. It looked to me like Eubank had gone to 160 once too often. That's certainly one possibility. Benn's tactics were spot on. They were absolutely excellent. Him, Tony Sims, and the team obviously got themselves, the tactics on point. But Eubank just never got going. And from the opening bell, Benn was the one taking the centre stage, the centre of the ring. He didn't relinquish it for the entire fight. It was noticeable that he was, for the most part, this was true for most rounds, walking Eubank down, and Eubank did not like the smaller man near him. Benn looked physically stronger. That's what Eubank looked like he lacked. He just didn't look as if he had any physical strength in him. He couldn't get his jab going with any kind of consistency. If anything, they were more like "don't hurt me" jabs rather than the sort of ramrod that he needed to keep Benn off. As I say, when they were up close, Benn was the one doing the mauling. There were at least 3 occasions that I can recall where Eubank fell to the floor. He sort of crumpled, just from a little bit of shoving and argy-bargy. That's not a good sign. He just looked like an old, drained fighter. And, of course, one has to wonder about the weight, which we've discussed, ever since this fight was initially mentioned. But also that his age. I mean, he's 36 now. And people don't realise this. You younger people, you do not realise that the older you get, the more difficult it is to take weight off. I used to eat like a fucking horse when I was a teenager, and I was a skinny rake. That includes for the first half of my 20s. Now I'm a lot closer to 16 stone to 17 stone than I am 16 stone. I'm way about 5 stone more than I did when I was a kid, and I can't take half a stone off without having to really work at it. That's the way it goes. Your body changes as you get older. And I can't believe that the age and the weight wasn't a factor in this fight, because although Eubank in the post-fight interview was saying that he'd been through a lot of things in this over the last couple of months, whatever he's talking about, whether he's talking about legal stuff, whether he's talking about the fact that I believe his partner's pregnant with twins, or that obviously must have some sort of emotional effect on him. I don't know what it was. I haven't got a clue. But what I do know is that Conor Benn boxed a beautiful fight, a very, very impressive fight. For the first 4 or 5 rounds, I got the feeling that Benn, he'd obviously been briefed, instructed very, very strictly. This is the game plan. You stick to it. You don't go hell for leather. I give the instructions. This would be Tony Sims talking. I want you to do this, this, and this. Okay. I don't care what happens here. You stick to the game plan. Because Ben at times was almost like, I just want to start throwing those, bowling ball overhand rights. And he threw a couple of them, to be honest with you. But for the most part, it was very controlled, contained boxing from Benn. And I've always thought Ben can box a bit. I think it's a little unfair. It has been unfair of people to say, well, he's just a crude slugger. No, he's got some ability. He's got some boxing ability. The thing is, until tonight, he hadn't beaten a world-class operator. He'd beaten several semi-retired older fighters in a row. And he'd beaten a couple of, European level, good quality European level fighters. Sebastian Formella being a good example. He'd been on the floor against Cedric Payno the first time, but that was very, very, very early on in his career. So, and certainly his chin stood up to Eubank in the first fight. So there was always the feeling that, if he's got gears to go through, we've yet to see them. He may well have gears to go through. And in a boxing sense, as bad as Eubank looked, as drained and as old as Eubank looked, we shouldn't take anything away from Ben, because Ben, he had the first word and he had the final word for the most part. There were only a couple of occasions when Eubank managed to string together a few half-decent salvos, and at no point did he hurt Ben. I gave Eubank 1 round in this fight, which was the same, believe it or not, as Howard Foster. He scored it the same as me, 119 to was it 107? I think someone had it 116, 110. Maybe I thought it was too close, but yeah, this was without question. This was an easy win for Conor Benn, and to have floored Eubank twice in the final round. I mean, if ever there was a cherry on the cake, that's it. Excellent performance by Ben. It really was. He says he wants to go down to 147. He looked thicker in the middle. I mean, there is weight that can be taken off, I'm sure. I still think 154 might be his weight, but he says 147, okay. And if ever he needs an example of a bloke who stays in a weight division too long, he's probably looking at the bloke across the ring of his last 2 fights, and that's CHRIS EUBANK Jr., because I don't know where Eubank Jr. goes from here. A jump up to 168, he may have left it too long. That first fight against Ben when he was in hospital with dehydrated for 3 days, that may well have taken more than he realised out of him. But for Ben, he's obviously a younger man. He's 29, I think. He's got a few years left at the top. Maybe he can go and get his world title now at one of the weights. I know he wants Barrios for the WBC belt at 147. If he can get down there, we'll see. 154 is a minefield, lots and lots of talent at 154. But Ben he's not a 160-pounder, but I'm having doubts whether he's a welterweight anymore. But he can box a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see how he does against a world-class 147 or 154-pounder who is not, towards the end of his career, a bit drained and a bit old. Someone who doesn't have that many fistic miles on the clock. And I'm not saying Ben can't do it. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to diminish his achievement. He beat Eubank fair and square. Eubank was, very sort of respectful afterwards. Yeah, he deserved it. He beat me fair and square. Give him a hug. And as Conor said, that's the end. That's the end of the Ben Eubank thing. And he also said to Nigel, I've got one over on you because I've beaten a Eubank, which is true. Whether Junior was ever as good as Senior or not is beg to differ. But then I don't think Conor's as good as Nigel yet. So we'll see. But yeah, it wasn't the tear up that the first fight was. It wasn't a great fight. It was intriguing and absorbing because it unraveled in a sort of one-sided way, and you were thinking, what's going on here? And of course you had that very big finish, with the 2 knockdowns. But it was okay. It was good, but we don't need a rubber match. It's 1 each. Let's move on now. But yeah, what did you think? Did you like it? Did you get anything out of it? Why do you think Ben scored such an easy victory over a guy who'd previously beaten him? Do you have any theories? Maybe you just think he's the better fighter. That's fair enough. If you do, no problem. And yeah, let me know what you think anyway. All right, thanks a lot, ladies and gentlemen. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed this video and subscribe to the channel if you're new, and thanks for your support as always. I'm looking forward to reading what you got to say, and bye for now.